Right now we are seeing more and more investments going to rural projects, rural areas after the RIA. So Christine and Ed, we talk about this? Can you also like expand this a little bit and talk about um, how important the good paying jobs created by EB5 it is for the rural communities right now, with more and more projects happening in the rural areas post RIA.
Yeah, I can start off on one thing that uh, was brought to mind earlier when we were talking about this was just the concept of economic mobility, and I've been in a lot of conversations related to EB5 and multiple stakeholders considering EB5, and the conversation many times comes up around, well, what types of jobs are actually going to be created as a result of this investment? And I'm really pleased to just share here that in a lot of these meetings, it's clearly stated, no, we don't want just entry level jobs. We don't want bad jobs. This is our community. We want to make sure that there's economic mobility, and by definition, that jobs that you can grow into, not only just from a wage standpoint, but from a skill set and leadership standpoint. So that is a very real conversation that occurs as it relates to EB5. Now, your question was about rural communities. We see all across the United States. I'm located in Atlanta in the Southeast. Brain drain, economic brain drain, and leakage from the rural community. But if the EB5 is bringing jobs to rural areas, we see a lot of interest and a lot of conversations around rural communities here in Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee. How can this source of capital be used to offset some of the brain drain and create or stimulate investment opportunities that allow people that are living in those areas to maintain a decent wage and have opportunities to further support their community in the rural area as opposed to leaving and moving to suburban or urban areas across the country?
Thank you, Ed. And the thoughts from you, Christine?
I completely agree with what Ed said. I think the additional component that um, would be interesting to actually zoom in on measure is that when you build a building in Manhattan, there's such a wide range of commercial activities already going on in those areas that they can absorb, the downstream impacts, whether it's the lunches for the workers, the transportation, the local transportation. There's a lot of existing, and it has impacts. But when you go to a rural area, which doesn't necessarily have that wide range, the downstream impacts often are creating new businesses that didn't exist. So it's hard to measure, but it's actually a lot of fun to imagine what those downstream impacts are in areas that maybe had one restaurant or one supermarket, but now especially with continued EB5 investment in some of these areas, you're creating whole new industries in those areas outside of where the EB5 investment is taking place. Um, we've certainly seen in some projects they have to do things like build housing for their workers if it's a 2 or 3 or 4 year investment. And that brings in hospitality workers to take care of those people. If you're if you're buying a hotel to be able to put up workers, I mean, that's a massive number of people. They are spending money, on groceries, that help tax implications in that region. I mean, it's just when we can get granular enough, it'd be fascinating to see a case study of a project that really looked at all the impacts at a granular level in a region that is rural. The rural definition is
Mhm.
very narrow. It's a very small population. It's interesting to see where a project would bring in thousands of workers and see what those impacts might be. So.
Yeah, very good. And I mean, this is the numbers. Um, do not lie. It's 73,000 um a year for the range. It's not a low amount. Like EB5 creates jobs and create good paying jobs. So this is fascinating. I think this is the first time that we see an economic impact report for EB5 that focus on labor income. So I would like to thank Jerry and your team to bring this important data point to life.